the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up!
Well, hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of CorbinCenter as we talk more about the Fusion, the Cedar Rapids Fusion. I, of course, am your host, Darin Corbin, the loudmouth from the Lakes area, and we are going to discuss this team because we have a lot to talk about, whether it's good or bad. But that first season, let's talk about this. Let's make the first point that I want to say right off the bat. First year as a team, 11-5 winning record, qualifying, making the playoffs. Amazing job. Clinched their division. Now, was the division exactly strong? It wasn't weak by any means. I mean, Buffalo was right there. If the Cedar Rapids, if the Fusion would have lost that last game of the season, they would have been tied. It would have been tied right with Buffalo, and they would have had to go to a tiebreaker to even qualify for the playoffs. So it was a very close race. But the team that clinched home field advantage, the Denver Broncos, they've been beat by the Fusion early on in the season. I believe it was either week 4 or 5. But let's talk about the second half. I said there is definitely good and bad, and I want to save the good, as always, for the end. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just ripping on this team, but we have to address this. So people always ask me, Darin, what do you feel about Cedar Rapids for the Fusion? What do you feel optimistic? The winning record, absolutely, they did great. A lot of the rookies really stood up, which, again, we'll talk about. I want to make sure we address that. Side note, they qualified for the playoffs, so this has got to be promising, right? This has absolutely got to be great going in. There's nothing that you could say that was bad. They exceeded all expectations. What could possibly be the bad? And let me tell you exactly what I noticed, as much as fans did notice. Those last 3 games of the season. When you go into the playoffs, even if you are looking to be a playoff contender, you do not want to... I mean, this is not the time. You can start slow and build at the end of the year because you want to ride momentum. It is not the time in the final of the season to lose momentum. Absolutely, 100%. That is the absolute opposite. We need to analyze these last 3 games. We need to talk about what happened here. And you know the goals that every single Madden team, Madden 06 team is put forward. And when we go into these franchise modes, we know exactly what we're looking at. Now, this one is a big one. Look at the underperforming here on the scores. First of all, the victories here, yes, 2-1. We have that. We lead into it, but just the ability to put up offensive numbers was low. 17-11. That's a 1-score game, and they did leave the door open even for... they left the door open for them to come back. If they would have got one more possession, they had 3 seconds left on the clock. Luckily, they ran it out on the kickoff. Thank God. Absolutely thank God. But there would have been a really good chance, sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes here on this one, that the Colts could have came back on this game. There was absolutely a door open for the Colts to pull this off. 17-11, and the Colts are not exactly a dominant team right now. They didn't even qualify for the playoffs. And then the week 16, they go to Buffalo. They go to a division rival. And Bills win 19-13. Again, underscoring all the way through. And then finally they come back and they play the Patriots. That's great. But the Patriots at halftime, 14-0. Craig Nelson, star of this show, had nothing to do with Craig at all. But there were only 3 targeted. It was Craig, Rodgers, and then also Vincent. They were the only 3 that had been targeted the whole time. Everything else was running game. But when you go 14-0, and then at the end of the game was 21-0. That means that in the second half, where a lot of times this favors these teams, where they can put up numbers really quick in the second half, they only scored 1 touchdown the whole time. Now, this is a combination of things. This could be, first of all, the defense did leave a lot of gaps where they were able to drive down the field. Yes, they stopped momentum, or yes, they were able to create a turnover. But again, there was like 50-yard drives, 60-yard drives put up. A lot of the fumbles There was interceptions, a couple things. And granted, it was all pass rush. It was not because of foolish throws, except for the one in the end zone in the game 17 there against the Patriots. That was the only one there. But other than that, this is underperforming. When you're looking for a team to score 30 points in one game, which is average, by the way, which is the average points, you almost going to add up these games, and barely two of the 3 games wouldn't even add up to 30 points in one game. Now, this is not the point to slack off. This is not it's a young team. They're going to make mistakes, but you just proved that you are top of your division and you're clinching. You need to ride that wave into the playoffs because, again, if you're going to leave a team like the Colts open, what are you going to do to one of the top playoff teams? And also, they do not have home field advantage all the way through. So if they encounter the Denver Broncos a second time, even though they won at home, they might lose on the road. But look, I'm not here to dwell on this. We have said this, playoffs after time after time. Why don't we talk about the good? All right, first of all, they make it to the playoffs their first year. Even the Red Snappers, the Pensacola Red Snappers last year did not make it to the playoffs their first year. They ended 8-8. So this is great. This is a great upswing here. This is absolutely amazing. But here is the biggest thing to come out of this. Rookies did step up. And there's one in particular that we have to really, really acknowledge. Now, the MVP did not go to anybody on this team. However, there was some domination in the offensive department, and the future is very bright for the offense of this team. First of all, Rockwell Welch Manor, best QB in the league, puts up 2,270 yards, 16 touchdowns, which is a little low, but that's still good, and a QBR rating of 96.5. He ends up getting quarterback of the year. That's great. That's awesome. In a rookie season, you can't ask for anything more. Also, we'll get to this, but he is a Pro Bowl selection, and he is the starting Pro Bowler in the AFC. So this is great. That's awesome. That's an amazing season. What you need to know, also keep in mind, remember, he had a broken jaw for 5 weeks. He was out for 5 weeks, and that is why the numbers are low. But what he would have been able to do in those 5 weeks, there's a good chance that he would have had 20 to 25 touchdowns passing, maybe 3,000 yards if he kept putting up 300-yard games. Now, again, we look at it and we think there wasn't really too many of those 300-yard games or the 100-yard games that were really there, but it's not like he doesn't have the offensive weapons to make that possible. Absolutely, he could have done that. But this is where we need to focus on, and this is the shining star of it all. Sturgis, Arvedo, Gonzalez, the rookie running back, where they made a trade to get rid of Dan Brooks, who was a member of the old regime, traded him to the Cowboys. A great fit to that. You get a young running back and a draft pick out of that, and you say to Garza that you are going to lead this team. He's not the fastest guy. He's got speed. He's an excellent break tackler. He's a great plow-through runner for the speed that he has, which has made him essential. But look at this. He was the offensive player of the year. He was the offensive rookie of the year. He was the best running back of the year in the entire league. He ended the year with 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. The only thing that really, and that's just rushing touchdowns. That's not even receiving touchdowns. He had a few of those. And honestly, a couple things that we noticed here, which probably will not play in the favor, is Barry Vincent, the backup running back here. He came in on a couple of drives that Garcia took all the way downfield. You saw that Garcia put up 40 yards, 50 yards of rushing going all the way down. And when he was out, recovering on the sidelines, being fatigued, because you do not want to lose him as a crucial spot, Barry Vincent would step in and he would get the touchdown pass. So, not saying that it wasn't a great play. You take touchdowns, however that they come to you. But what you do, it's almost like when that person on your team for the group project doesn't do any work but still gets an A. That is kind of how we feel. And Garza needs to be acknowledged for how well he did. And absolutely, the awards coming through are great, but he could add more touchdowns had he played a little bit more on those final drives. Absolutely. Very rarely was he knocked back for yardage. A lot of times you'll see him break tackles to get extra yards. His yards after carry or yards per carry were very high this season, all things considered for a running back. Now, Going forward, it is very clear that Garza will be the main star. He's a Pro Bowl selection as well, so we have these two offensive components as the selection. One thing we have to keep in mind, let's talk about who got selected for the Pro Bowl. They're the only two offensive weapons. There is 6 wide receivers on this team. None of them made the Pro Bowl. And there's a lot of good talent there. We saw Craig Nelson put up a lot of numbers. He's very fast. We also know Gideon Riss, the rookie wide receiver. It was not so much a target. In the last game of the season against the Patriots, no catches. I don't even know if he was targeted at all that game. But they have a very strong defense, and they know that number one guy they have to defend, and they did a great job shutting him down. But here's an excellent point. When you are thinking about who you're going to use those draft picks, as draft pick capital for, keep this in mind. Every single offensive lineman, including your second overall pick, DeFalco Madhorse, a rookie right tackle, your rookie Mac Grucy, your rookie left guard Tonka Foolsgold, all 5 starting offensive linemen named to the Pro Bowl selection. That is amazing. One of the first gaps that you always have to consider in this is you're not going to get those big run stoppers, pass blockers, all that stuff. You're not going to get those guys. The fact that we have such a strong offensive line and such a strong component in Sturgis Alvarado Garza. I mean, Garza and Welchman both are great scrambling runners. The running attack for this team is very, very strong. That is one of their biggest weapons. That might be a big part of why a lot of wide receivers were not chosen here. But when you have speed out there too, if they start catching on and you get these good run defenses, then you have the weapons on either side. And we have shown that both Luther Murray and both Welchman can also string together 5 passes in a row, 10 passes in a row. Both of them did it this year. So this is absolutely amazing, but there's only one person that made it from the defense named to the Pro Bowl, and it was a shock to us too. Cornerback Deuce Jones. He's a good player. We've seen him get sacks on the blitz. We've seen him pick up. He's definitely collected more tackles than we gave him credit for, but Deuce Jones, absolutely 100%, was not expecting him to be named. Let's face it, was not expecting him to be named, but if he can step up and get into that defense and make them a very a big component of the playoffs. If all these guys come together and continue to do their job from the season going into this final, it will be great. It will be absolutely great, and that's what we want to see. So let's face it, we are still optimistic about this team. There's no doubt about that. Are they going to be a Super Bowl contender? It's hard to say. There's still a little bit to work out, but they're young. And in 2 or 3 years, they're definitely going to be a contender unless something happens. So let's stay tuned. We're coming up. We're going into the playoffs next. I can't wait to break down how this team's first season comes to an end. I'm hoping it's all good news. I'm hoping we're proven wrong. But let's stay tuned and see how this team goes.